Welcome to the Heartbreak Chronicles, where every story is a raw reflection of life. Hit that subscribe button to stay tuned, give us a like to show your support, and share this episode with your friends. Don't forget to leave a comment and let us know what you think. Now, let's dive into today's story. My name is Jackson, and I'm a little-known grappling coach. 8 years ago, I married the beautiful and capable Evelyn, and we now have a lovely son, Oliver. I thought we had a happy-go-lucky life until that man Marcus came along. Evelyn is an executive at a large construction company. A few months ago, she took over the management of a large stadium project. It was on this project that she met Marcus, a recently retired football star and one of the main investors in the project. At first, I didn't care much for Marcus. Evelyn occasionally mentions him as a great support in the program. But as time went on, I began to notice a twinkle in Evelyn's eye when she mentioned Marcus, an excitement I hadn't seen in her eyes in a long time. I love Evelyn dearly, but I must admit that my work has blinded me to the changes within her. As a combat coach, I spend most of my time in the gym. I thought that if you worked hard and provided stability for your family, you were a good husband. But in retrospect, did I ignore Evelyn's emotional needs? One night, Evelyn came home much later than usual. As she walked through the door, I could smell the faint scent of cologne on her. It wasn't my scent or her usual perfume. My heart suddenly clenched. Busy at work? I tried to sound calm. Evelyn glanced at me and smiled. Yeah, Marcus invited the whole team to dinner today to celebrate the project going well. I nodded and didn't say anything else. But that night, I tossed and turned. I began to think back on all the details of the recent past. Evelyn's frequent overtime work, the text message beeps that went off every now and then, and her occasional out-of-place expressions. All of this points to a fact I don't want to face. My wife may have developed feelings for Marcus. Over the next few days, I began to pay more attention to Evelyn's every move. I noticed that she started to dress up more carefully and even bought a few new clothes. She said it was for work, but I knew that she was trying to impress Marcus. I thought about confronting Marcus directly, but I was afraid that would only push Evelyn further away. I've thought about confessing my feelings to Evelyn, but every time I see her tired but happy face, I just can't say it. I don't want to be the one to break her joy. Evelyn seemed to sense my unease, and one night she took it upon herself to talk to me about Marcus. Jackson, I realize that you may have some misconceptions about Marcus, she said, but I assure you that we only have a working relationship. He is indeed an attractive man, but the person I love is you. I looked into Evelyn's eyes, trying to find any trace of dishonesty in them, but all I saw was sincerity. I nodded, feeling a slight sense of comfort, but the inner turmoil wasn't completely gone. I believe you, Evelyn, I said, but please understand that it's inevitable that I would be concerned to see you so close to another man. Evelyn takes my hand. I understand, Jackson. I promise to be more aware of the boundaries between us. You are my husband and Oliver's father. No one can take your place in my heart. Hearing those words gave me a warm feeling. Maybe I'm really overthinking this. Maybe the relationship between Evelyn and Marcus is really just a simple working relationship. However, fate always seems to like to give unexpected surprises. Just when I thought everything was going to be okay, Marcus suddenly announced that he was going to throw a big celebration of the successful completion of the stadium project. Evelyn was excited to tell me the news and invited me to join her. Jackson, you've got to come, she enthused. This is the biggest project of my career, and I want you to be there to witness the moment. Looking into Evelyn's sparkling eyes, I nodded. Perhaps this celebration will be our chance to reconnect. Maybe, when Evelyn sees how proud I am of her accomplishments, she'll realize how precious our bond is. But deep inside me, a voice kept reminding me that this celebration could also be a turning point in our marriage. I didn't know what to expect on that night of champagne and ambiguity. All I know is that I have to be brave no matter what the outcome. As the day of the celebration drew closer, I felt an inexplicable sense of nervousness and anticipation. I knew that on that night, our love would be tested. Is it as indestructible as we once believed? Or will it falter in the face of temptation? The answer will soon be revealed, and I, for one, can only hold my breath as I await my fate. Just a day before the celebration, Evelyn looked particularly nervous. She double-checked her dress, her makeup, and even the suit I was going to wear. "You're rarely this nervous," I said half-jokingly. "Is Marcus more important than I thought?" Evelyn stops what she's doing and turns to look me straight in the eye. "Jackson, you know how important this project is to my career. I just want everything to be perfect." I nodded, but was still a little uneasy inside. I knew Evelyn was a perfectionist, but this level of tension still struck me as a little unusual. That night, as we lay in bed, Evelyn suddenly turned to me. "Jackson, no matter what happens, I want you to know that you and Oliver will always be the most important people in my life." I looked into her eyes, trying to read more into them, but Evelyn quickly closed them. I lay in the darkness, thinking, were Evelyn's words comforting, or were they setting the stage for what was about to happen? The next morning, I woke up to find Evelyn already up. I walked to the kitchen and see her preparing breakfast for Oliver. "It's a big day," I said. "Are you ready?" Evelyn gave me a smile, but I noticed a hint of unease in her eyes. "I think so," she said. "Jackson, promise me that whatever happens tonight, we'll face it calmly, okay?" I felt my heart miss a beat. Evelyn's words reinforced my belief that something important might happen tonight. But I nodded. "Sure, we're a team, remember?" Evelyn came over and gave me a hug. We stood like that in silence for a while, as if drawing on each other's strength. That evening, we arrived on time for the celebration. The newly completed stadium was decorated with streamers and filled with scantily clad guests. I took Evelyn's hand and felt it tremble slightly. Just then, Marcus shows up. He was handsome in a well-tailored suit. I felt Evelyn's hand tighten on mine as he walked toward us. "Evelyn, Jackson," greeted Marcus enthusiastically. "Welcome to our celebration. Evelyn, this program couldn't have been so successful without you." I noticed a strange look on Evelyn's face when Marcus said, "Our celebration." At that moment, I felt as if I were an outsider. As the night progressed, I watched Evelyn and Marcus talk frequently, and there seemed to be an endless stream of conversation between them. I try to fit in with the crowd, but I always feel out of place. Just then I saw Marcus pull Evelyn aside, and they seemed to be having a serious conversation. My heart races, wondering what they're talking about. When Evelyn returned, she was a little pale. "Jackson," she said, her voice trembling a little, "can we go outside and talk?" I nodded and followed her out of the noisy venue. We made our way to a quiet corner outside the gym. Evelyn took a deep breath, then spoke. "Jackson, there's something I have to tell you." I held my breath, waiting for the truth that could change our lives. Is our love really unbreakable? Or will it fall apart in this moment? All will be revealed in the conversation that follows. "Jackson, there's something I have to tell you." Before Evelyn could finish her sentence, she was suddenly interrupted by a clamor. Marcus appeared behind us at some point, a drunken grin on his face. "Hey, what are you two doing hiding here?" Marcus asked loudly. "The party's just getting started." I saw Evelyn's expression become momentarily tense, as she quickly adjusted her emotions and said to Marcus, "We'll be right back." Marcus nodded and returned to the clamor of the meeting. I turned to Evelyn. "What were you going to say?" Evelyn hesitated and finally shook her head. "It's nothing. Let's go back." We rejoined the meeting, but a stone was always hanging in my heart. What the hell was Evelyn trying to say back there? Why would Marcus' presence change her mind? As the night progressed, champagne continued to be poured into highball glasses. I watched Evelyn and Marcus dance on the dance floor, and their silent understanding made my heart ache. I tried to blend in with the crowd, but always felt out of place. Just then, a waiter accidentally spilled his drink on my suit. I excused myself to go to the restroom to clean up, but I actually wanted to find a quiet place to calm down. As I pushed open the door to the restroom, I heard whispered conversations coming from inside. I was about to turn away, but suddenly I heard Evelyn's voice. "Marcus, we can't do this." Evelyn's voice was filled with hesitation and unease. "Why not?" Marcus' voice was low and magnetic. "You know we have something special between us." My heart almost stopped. I knew I shouldn't have eavesdropped, but it was as if my feet were nailed to the ground. "I have a husband, a child." Evelyn's voice trembled. "But you're not happy, are you?" Marcus pursued. I can see that you've found a passion for life in this program. I can give you more, Evelyn. I heard a sound of clothing rubbing together, then a soft sob from Evelyn. I don't know. There was a struggle in Evelyn's voice. Just then I heard someone approaching. I hurriedly ducked aside into the shadows. Marcus and Evelyn emerged from the restroom, their clothes a bit disheveled. I see Marcus' hand still on Evelyn's waist. I felt a wave of vertigo. My wife, my beloved Evelyn, to be so intimate with another man in plain sight. I didn't know how to react. Should I rush up and question them or pretend I didn't see anything? I ended up choosing the latter. I quietly returned to the meeting and acted as if nothing had happened. But my insides were starting to crumble. For the rest of the day, I wandered the venue like a ghost. I saw Evelyn come back with a slight flush on her face. She and Marcus exchanged glances every now and then, and the emotion contained in those glances cut me to the core. Alcohol became my only companion. I kept drinking, hoping to numb my senses. Maybe it was the alcohol, but I started having some crazy ideas. I wanted to rush up and punch Marcus in the face. I wanted to expose Evelyn's betrayal in front of everyone, and I even wanted to just silently leave and never come back. Just as I was about to lose control, Marcus walked onto the stage. He took the microphone and began his speech. "Thank you all for coming to tonight's celebration." Marcus' voice echoed throughout the room. The success of this project would not have been possible without the efforts of everyone involved, especially our program manager, Evelyn. All eyes turned to Evelyn. She stood there with a smile on her face, but I could tell she was uncomfortable. Marcus continues, "Evelyn is not only an outstanding project manager, but an amazing woman. Her talent, charisma, and dedication made this project exceptional." I saw Evelyn's face turn pale. She seems to realize that Marcus is about to say something he shouldn't. As a matter of fact, Marcus' voice lowered slightly with a hint of ambiguity. "I must admit that I have not only gained a beautiful stadium in this project, but also a wonderful relationship." There was a sudden uproar in the meeting room. I felt all eyes on me. I saw Evelyn look at Marcus in horror, then turn to me with apologies and fear in her eyes. I can't control myself anymore. I rushed the stage and punched Marcus in the face. He staggered back, obviously not anticipating my reaction. "Jackson, don't." Evelyn's screams came, but I couldn't care less. Marcus and I wrestled as everyone around us backed away in panic. The guards tried to separate us, but we were both so steeped in anger and jealousy that it was difficult to be pulled apart. In the end, it was Evelyn's cries that stopped me. I let go of Marcus and turned to Evelyn. She stood there with tears streaming down her face, looking so vulnerable and helpless. "Why, Evelyn?" I asked under my breath. "Why are you doing this to me?" Evelyn shook her head in pain. "Jackson, I don't know. I really don't know." A dead silence fell over the entire venue. Everyone was dumbfounded at the tragic scene. I felt a wave of shame and anger flood over me. I took one last look at Evelyn, then turned and left the venue. I drove aimlessly around the city, my mind replaying what had just happened. Evelyn and Marcus' conversation in the restroom, Marcus' confession on stage, Evelyn's pained expression. Everything was a nightmare. After I don't know how long, I found myself parked in front of my house. I sat in the car, wondering if I should go in. I'm afraid to face the reality of what may have changed, and I'm afraid to face that sweet son of ours, Oliver. Just then, my cell phone rang. "It's Evelyn." I hesitated, but picked up the phone. "Jackson," Evelyn's voice was filled with tears. "Please come home. We need to talk." I took a deep breath. "I don't know what else we have to talk about, Evelyn." "Please," Evelyn pleaded, "for Oliver's sake." I felt a pang of heartache when I heard my son's name. No matter what happens, I can't leave my kids behind. "Okay," I said finally. "I'll be right up." I walked into the house and saw Evelyn sitting on the couch in the living room, her eyes red and swollen. Oliver had gone to bed and the house was awfully quiet. "Jackson," Evelyn stood up and tried to get closer to me, but I took a step back. "Explain," I said coldly. "I want to hear your explanation." Evelyn takes a deep breath and begins to tell the story of what happened between her and Marcus. She says she was only attracted to his charisma at first, but as the program progressed, she found herself relying more and more on Marcus for support and encouragement. But I swear, Jackson, nothing happened between us, Evelyn said through her tears. I know I have feelings for him, but I've been restraining myself. I love you. I love Oliver, and I don't want to lose our family. I listened to Evelyn's explanation with mixed feelings. I wanted to believe her, but what I had just seen at the celebration filled me with doubt again. So what happened in the bathroom tonight? I asked. Evelyn looked at me in surprise. You heard that? I nodded. I heard enough. Evelyn lowered her head. Marcus was drunk and he tried to kiss me, but I pushed him away and I told him we couldn't. But you didn't leave immediately, I pointed out. You stayed there and continued the conversation with him. I don't know what to do, Evelyn said painfully. I'm terrified and I don't know how to face you. We lapsed into silence. I looked at the woman in front of me, the woman I had loved for 8 years, and suddenly felt so strange. What are we going to do, Evelyn? I finally asked. Is our marriage salvageable? Evelyn looked up with a pleading look in her eyes. I wish I had. Jackson, I love you. I know I've made mistakes, but please give me a chance. We can get through this together, for us, for Oliver. I looked at Evelyn with a conflicted mind. I loved her, but her betrayal hurt me deeply. Our trust has been shattered, and rebuilding it will be a long and difficult process. I need time, I concluded, to think, to decide on our future. Evelyn nodded, tears welling up again. I understand. I'll wait for you, Jackson, however long it takes. I turned toward my bedroom, feeling physically and mentally exhausted. I know that in the days to come we will be faced with hard choices and a long process of restoration. Can our love really withstand such a test? Only time will give the answer. After that night, it was like a thick layer of gloom had fallen over our home. I moved to the guest room and couldn't stand sharing a room with Evelyn. Every morning, we pretend like nothing is wrong, as we prepare breakfast for Oliver and send him off to school. But once Oliver leaves, a suffocating silence falls over the house. I took a week's vacation and couldn't face the trainees in the boxing gym. I need time to think, to decide what to do next. Evelyn also took a leave of absence citing ill health, but we all know what the real reason was. On the third morning, I was in the kitchen making coffee when Evelyn walked in. She looked haggard. Her eyes were red and swollen, and she had obviously been up all night. Jackson, she whispered, can we talk? I looked up at her and then continued to focus on my coffee. What's there to talk about? I replied coldly. Evelyn took a deep breath. I know I hurt you and I hurt our family, but I want you to know that I really regret it. I'd do anything to salvage our relationship. I turned and looked her straight in the eye. Does that include quitting your job? Evelyn froze, obviously not anticipating the question. You mean leaving that program? It's not just that program, Evelyn. I mean leaving the whole company. As long as you're still working there, you'll inevitably have contact with Marcus. Evelyn's face turned pale. But Jackson, that's my career. I've fought for it for years. And you almost destroyed our marriage for this cause, I interrupted, bitterness in my voice. Evelyn lowered her head, tears welling up again. I looked at her with a conflicted mind. Part of me wanted to comfort her. The other part was tormented by the pain of betrayal. Just then, the doorbell rang. I walked to the door and realized that it was Marcus standing outside. What are you doing here? I asked through gritted teeth, clenching my fists. Marcus raises his hands in a gesture of surrender. I've come to apologize, Jackson. My behavior was inexcusable. I sneered. You think an apology is going to solve the problem? No, of course you can't, Marcus said. But I wish I had a chance to explain. I was drunk that night and said some things I shouldn't have. But the truth is, Evelyn has been very professional, and she's never crossed the line. It was wishful thinking on my part that misinterpreted her friendliness. I looked over to Evelyn, who was standing behind me, shock and confusion written all over her face. Why would you say that? Evelyn asked. Why deny everything that happened between us? Marcus shook his head. Because nothing happened, Evelyn. We have a working relationship, and that's all. I know my behavior has created a crisis in your marriage, and I want to make it right. I felt a wave of vertigo. Marcus' words complicate the whole thing. If what he says is true, what about Evelyn's confession after the celebration? I think you guys need to talk, Marcus said, turning to leave. I closed the door and turned to Evelyn. She stood there, looking both confused and scared. What's going on here, Evelyn? Asked I. Was all that you said to me a lie? Evelyn shook her head, tears in her eyes. No, Jackson. I'm not lying. I do have feelings for Marcus, but I swear nothing happened between us. I don't understand why he would say that. I sat on the couch, feeling exhausted. It's all getting too complicated. I don't know who to trust. I don't know how to deal with Evelyn. Just then, my cell phone rang. It's an unfamiliar number. I picked up the phone and heard a woman's voice. Is this Mr. Jackson, please? I'm Sophia, Marcus' wife. I froze. I didn't know Marcus was married. Hello, Sophia. What can I do for you? I tried to stay calm. I want to talk to you about Marcus and your wife. Sophia said, I have some information that I think you should know. I glanced at Evelyn, who was looking at me nervously. Okay, I said. Where do we meet? Half an hour later, I'm sitting in a cafe across from Sophia. She was an elegant lady who looked a few years younger than Marcus. Jackson, I know what happened, Sophia said as she got right to the point. Marcus told me everything. I raised an eyebrow. Really? Then please tell me what's going on. Sophia sighed. The truth is, Marcus has been playing with fire. He likes to tease married women and enjoys that thrill. But he never really crosses the line. With your wife, Evelyn, he does the same thing. He teases her, confuses and shakes her up, but nothing really happens. I felt a surge of anger. Is that what you call not crossing the line? Sophia shook her head. I know it sounds bad, but Jackson, I want you to know that Evelyn is innocent. She may have had some feelings for Marcus, but she always kept her distance. It was Marcus' behavior that caused this mess. I was silent for a moment, digesting the information. So why is Marcus denying everything? Why is he going to say that there was only a working relationship between them? Sophia smiled bitterly. Because he was scared. He realized that his actions could destroy a family, so he chose to deny everything in hopes of mitigating the damage. I felt a wave of exhaustion. It's all too complicated. I don't know who to trust. I don't know how to deal with Evelyn. Thank you for telling me this, Sophia, I said at last, but I still don't know what to do. Sophia reached out and gently took my hand. Jackson, I know this is hard, but if you still love Evelyn, please give her a chance. Don't let Marcus' stupid behavior ruin your marriage. I nodded and stood up, ready to leave. Just then I saw Evelyn standing there at the other end of the cafe with surprise and confusion in her eyes. Jackson, she called softly, what are you doing here? Who is this lady? I looked at Sophia and then at Evelyn, suddenly realizing what this scene would look like to Evelyn. I hastily explained, Evelyn, this is Sophia, Marcus' wife. We were talking about… But Evelyn had already turned and run out of the cafe. I chased after her, but she had already disappeared into the crowd. I stood in the street, feeling more confused than ever. Our trust has been so completely shattered that rebuilding it seems like an impossible task. I don't know if our marriage can continue. I don't know if I have the courage to fix the relationship. Just then, my cell phone rang. It's Oliver's school. My heart suddenly clenched. In the midst of this emotional storm, are we neglecting the most important person of all, our son? I picked up the phone and heard the teacher tell me that Oliver was crying at school and kept asking why mom and dad didn't love each other anymore. At that moment, I felt a deep pang of guilt and heartache. Our marital crisis didn't just affect Evelyn and me, it hurt Oliver deeply. I realized that no matter what happened between us, we had to do it for Oliver. I called Evelyn and told her about Oliver. We agreed to meet at the school and pick up our son together. As we stood in front of the school and watched a crying Oliver run toward us, Evelyn and I unanimously crouched down and held him tightly in our arms. In that moment, I felt the power of family and the unbreakable bond between the three of us. Maybe this is our chance to start over. Maybe it's worth trying again for Oliver, for the love we once had. But the road to rebuilding trust remains long and difficult. Our future is full of uncertainty, but at least we have each other and Oliver. That may be the strength we need to keep going. Over the next few weeks, my life and Evelyn's fell into a strange equilibrium. For Oliver's sake, we try to keep the peace on the surface, but the rift inside seems to be growing. I'm still staying in the guest room, and our conversations are limited to things about Oliver. However, Oliver's emotional problems are getting worse. He began to have frequent nightmares and became quiet at school. I felt a deep sense of remorse as I watched my son in pain. Our problems have seriously affected him, and that's the last thing I want to see happen. One night, after putting Oliver to bed, Evelyn knocked softly on my room door. "Jackson, can we talk?" Her voice sounded tired and vulnerable. I hesitated, but opened the door. Evelyn stood there, her eyes red and swollen, obviously having just cried. "Come in," I said, stepping back to let her into the room. Evelyn took a deep breath and then began to speak. "Jackson, I know a lot has happened between us, but I want you to know that I really regret it. I realized that I almost lost the most important thing of all, you and Oliver." I looked at her with mixed feelings. Part of me wants to forgive her, while the other part is still haunted by the pain of betrayal. "Evelyn," I spoke slowly, "I understand how you feel, but once trust is broken, it's hard to repair." Evelyn nodded, tears welling up again. "I know, but Jackson, I'm willing to do anything to regain your trust. I've quit my job. I won't see Marcus again, and I won't get involved in anything that could jeopardize our marriage. I just want our family back." I froze. Evelyn quit her job? The career she's been fighting for years? I suddenly realized that she was serious. "You don't have to do this," I said. "Your career is important to you." Evelyn shook her head. "Nothing is more important than you and Oliver." I finally realized that. We were silent for a while, each lost in our own thoughts. Finally, I spoke. "Evelyn, I can't promise that we'll be able to go back to our old ways right away, but maybe we could try to start over? For Oliver's sake and for our own." Evelyn looked up with a hopeful glint in her eyes. "Really? You're willing to give us a chance?" I nodded. "Yes, but it will take time, and it will take us working together. We need to rebuild trust and learn to understand and support each other again." Evelyn reached out and gently took my hand. "I do. Jackson, I promise I'll do my best." And so began the difficult journey of repairing our relationship. We decided to see a marriage counselor in hopes of getting professional guidance. At the same time, we began to spend more time with Oliver in an effort to repair the damage done to him. At the counselor's suggestion, we started scheduling date nights once a week, just like we did when we first started our relationship. We would have dinner together, watch a movie, or just walk and talk. Little by little, I found myself looking forward to these times. Once on our date night, Evelyn suggested going to the place where we had our first date, a small lake on the outskirts of the city. As we sat on a bench by the lake and watched the sun slowly set, I felt a serenity I hadn't felt in a long time. "Remember when we first came here?" Evelyn asked softly. I nodded, the corners of my mouth rising involuntarily. "Of course I remember. You were wearing that blue dress, and I was so nervous I couldn't even speak." Evelyn laughed. "Yeah, you were so cute then. I remember you even accidentally spilled your drink on my dress." We looked at each other and smiled, remembering those good times. Suddenly, I realized that despite all we've been through, the one who loves the other still exists within us. "Evelyn," I turned around and looked her seriously in the eyes. "I want to tell you that I still love you. Despite everything that's happened, my feelings have never changed." Evelyn's eyes glistened with tears. "Oh, Jackson, I love you too. Always loved. I'm sorry for ever making you doubt that." We embraced each other in a hug that seemed to contain all of our love, pain, remorse, and hope. As we parted, I felt as if the rift between us was slowly healing. However, life is not a fairy tale. Even though we are trying to repair our relationship, sometimes it is still difficult. Sometimes I still think about that night of celebration and a pang of unease wells up in my heart. Evelyn has her moments of depression and feels deep remorse for her behavior. But every now and then, we think of Oliver. Watching him become cheerful and active again, we knew we were doing the right thing. We are working hard not just for ourselves, but to give Oliver a complete, happy home. One day Oliver came back from school and excitedly showed us a picture he had drawn at school. The painting is of our family of 3, holding hands, all with smiles on our faces. Our teacher asked us to draw our favorite things, Oliver said proudly, and I drew our house. Evelyn and I both moistened our eyes as we looked at the picture. We smiled at each other with gratitude and hope in our hearts. We know that we will continue to work hard for this family and for Oliver, no matter how many obstacles lie ahead. A few months later, on our anniversary, I decided to surprise Evelyn. I arranged for Oliver to spend the night at his grandparents' house and then prepared a candlelight dinner at the house. When Evelyn came home and saw a room full of candles and roses, she was too surprised to speak. "Jackson, this is so beautiful," she whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. I walked toward her, got down on one knee, and pulled a small box out of my pocket. "Evelyn," I take a deep breath. "We've been through so much this past year. There's been laughter, tears, pain, and hope. But most importantly, we made it through it all together. I've come to realize that no matter what happens, you will always be the person I want to spend the rest of my life with. So, Evelyn, will you marry me again? Let's start over and make another promise to each other." Evelyn sobbed and nodded her head vigorously. "Yes, Jackson, I do. I always will." I stood up and put the ring on her finger, then hugged her tightly. I know that this is not the end, but a new beginning. Our love has been tested and made stronger. We've both grown and learned to understand and value each other better. Of course, we know there's a long road ahead. Rebuilding trust is a long process, and we may still encounter setbacks and difficulties. But we believe that as long as we continue to love each other and continue to work hard for each other and our family, we can overcome anything. That night, as we cuddled up together, I felt a peace and happiness I had never felt before. I know that whatever the future holds, we will face it together. For our love, tried and tested, is indeed indestructible. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's story. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have a story to share about your own or someone else's experience, please feel free to contact me. Take care.